Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Waffle Press Commentaries. I haven't done one of these in a while. I'm your host, Diego Crespo. With me today is my retrospective co-host, Matt Garingo.
Hi, that's me.
Yeah, we're going to run through this really fast because we're going to talk about John Carpenter's The Thing, a film no one on planet Earth has ever said anything about. So we thought we'd fill the void with a long commentary track in this very odd time in human history. I'll ask Matt later why he wanted to do this one, because this was actually a Matt recommendation that we do the Thing commentary. So we could talk about that later. But for right now, do not press play yet. We just wanted to give a little introduction on this commentary track.
Mike, I'm watching my DVD copy. Diego's watching a digital copy.
As the Lord intended. The Lord being Michael Mann.
And yes. 1 hour, 48 minutes, 41 seconds, give or take a second.
And on YouTube, it's 42 seconds, so don't know what that's about. But yeah, if you have your copy ready to go, just get ready. We're going to start.
You got to say as soon as the Universal logo goes away, at least on my DVD copy.
Okay, yeah, if on your physical copy, once the Universal logo goes away, for digital copies, I think it's just straight all the way through. So we're going to press play in 3, 2, 1, play.
Yes.
Yay.
There we go. A Universal picture.
We're going to hold back a little bit on personal history, but Matt, why'd you choose this movie to do a commentary on? Something we've never done together.
Because I've watched it 3 times since the quarantine. So I don't know. I'm kind of re-obsessed with one of my all-time favorite. Might be, I think, on this rewatch, I think officially this is my second favorite film of all time. So first place being Jaws. This one is second.
Rob Bottin. I have trouble choosing the favorites. I know Jaws is your safe lock. I think Jurassic Park was for a while. Then it goes to like Blade Runner and Alien. And I actually met someone, a good friend now of mine, who's very close with Dean Cundey. And I was like, oh my God, even if they were like an asshole, I'd want to get close to them just so I could eventually meet Dean Cundey. I don't know if that makes me a bad person, but I just want to thank him for his work on this and a bunch of other shit I like.
And Jack and Jill.
We're just starting. And
screenplay by Bill Lancaster.
Oh, Matt, you have some notes on that, don't you?
Yes. Well, Bill Lancaster, his other notable film is The Bad News Bears, which is a movie that has aged incredibly strange. Up here comes the UFO.
Yeah. The Predator rips us off.
I know, but hey, if you're going to rip off a movie.
Yeah, no, it's one of the best ones to do so.
But man, this logo that comes up is just so great on the black screen. But yeah, I read the Bill Lancaster screenplay. It is very not great. It has all the like bits and pieces of the story, save a couple changes. There's a couple scenes that are in there that are not in the film. There's a few things that are reworked. It mostly has all of the scenes that are in the movie just in like a completely different order, and it speaks to structure being an incredibly important aspect of this film. Because man, it is not. I'm shocked they got approval to shoot with that script. I mean,
there's something we've talked about a lot on the retrospective episodes, is that you want all the pieces to come together as best as possible before cameras are rolling. Pre-production, I think, is maybe one of the most important parts of the filmmaking process, but then that's kind of a gray area, I guess, because it's all super important. But I think it is possible to make a good film from a bad script. It's just really fucking difficult.
Yeah, well, it's when you really dig into the production history, because it's surprisingly scattered, the information about this. Like, you actually have to go digging. There's not like, if you have any of the Alien DVDs, there's usually at least like one comprehensive documentary per movie. At least for the first 3.
Film. No, Resurrection too.
Yeah, but that one's kind of like a fluff piece.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Well, when
if
you
you
end on
watch
that
it.
note, like,
Yeah, I'm just saying that, like, the a lot of these movies from this era, you get documentaries where they very much are like, look, here's how fucked up making this movie was. And you get some of that. There's a very good documentary on the DVD version that I believe was carried to the recent Blu-ray release called oh god, I don't remember, just the making of the thing, whatever. Um, and but it doesn't cover everything, which includes like a whole. They almost made this with like Tobe Hooper, you know.
see, I know
Be,
very little about that. I know of the production history being like a nightmare to shoot just because stuff like they couldn't get beer up there. And then,
yeah,
you're shooting in the fucking snow, which is always just like the worst thing to ever happen to anybody.
yeah. This is
But
it surprisingly isn't. This movie wasn't as hard as you would expect. Because a lot of this you don't realize is on like a studio. I mean, a lot of the like shots of when they go to the UFO site later, that was filmed on like the Universal backlot. Like,
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, that's like you can kind of tell that's like a matte painting, but it's
mhm.
still just like, wow, the talent that it took to like create something that looks like that scale. Because you totally believe it like the first time you're watching it, like as a kid, because I think we both watched it around the same age too.
Oh yeah, it all meshes very well. I just noticed. I can't believe I've never noticed this, which maybe disqualifies me from doing this commentary altogether. But they have like a whole collage of pornography on the wall, like black and white pictures of women in various states of undress.
Well, I mean, it's a bunch of dudes, just
I should point
guys
out that
being
this scene,
dudes.
just guys being dudes, this scene, the famous chess wizard scene, predicts the entire film.
Wait,
Where
what?
Kurt Russell, he's checkmated, and so he destroys the computer, which is what they do. They get checkmated by the thing,
Wow.
so they burn the whole base down,
Wow.
which it kind of sets up his entire character right here.
Jesus, I never thought of that. But maybe that's just like a Kurt Russell Carpenter thing. Like the system of this movie's not working.
Maybe. Well,
Fuck it.
the chess thing was like a repeat thing in the original script, where like McCready's character keeps playing chess and keeps losing. Like that, it becomes like a repeat thing. And somewhere along the line, Carpenter was like, "We only need one fucking chess wizard scene." Like, there's literally a running gag of him destroying chess sets in the script. But it works fine the way it is.
Yeah, I've read the script long ago when I was first starting to be like interested in like filmmaking just as a process. And at the time I was like, maybe I just don't get how to read screenplays yet, because I was really like put off by that one in particular. And then I started reading like William Goldman stuff, and I was like, maybe it's not just me.
Yeah, they must have. I don't know if that was the shooting script and they changed it while they were filming, because there is like talks about how John Carpenter kind of rewrote this thing with Bill Lancaster. And there's also, Bill Lancaster describes his original script, and his description is very different than the version that is out there, which I believe ends. He said that he wrote a version that explicitly ends with Childs and McCready being the thing, which is not the version that has, if you read the script, it has like a ton of the lines, but it's like all like just slightly longer, slightly clunkier. So it helps how stripped down this final version is. And one big change is that I think the original idea was you weren't going to suspect that Kurt Russell's character McCready was going to be the hero. Like, he was kind of just going to start out as one of the men and then rise to the occasion. So his introduction came after this whole sequence with the Norwegians. The chess wizard scene like is in the script, but it's later. And it was a smart decision to move it to an earlier scene.
Yeah, I think it works better because, this is such an iconic Kurt Russell movie, along with the John Carpenter movie. But I don't know. I think that could have worked. I think that could have been like fun for a crowd pleaser. Although I will say this is like one of the ultimate crowd pleasers. Like, if you watch this with a crowd, if theaters are a thing, in the future, then
there's the Norwegian saying he explicitly calls it some sort of thing, I believe is the translation.
Oh, really? You know what? I'm a moron because I've never looked up what they're actually saying. I'm just like, yeah, they're foreign. So I don't know what that says about me.
Yeah, he's saying, "Get away from it, you fools." It's saying, well, I mean, it's honestly a kind of funny note that it's like, oh, if anyone at this base spoke Norwegian, the plot of this movie probably wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
Like, the guy's a little crazed.
Yeah,
but...
like they were shooting a dog through the Arctic tundra, and then a helicopter blows up behind him. So they'd still be like, what the fuck?
It would have aroused a little more suspicion for the dog, I think.
Yeah.
Which no one seems to put together for a long time. No, there's a lot of good ideas in the original script, and I do kind of like the idea of McCready kind of rising later, but I think you kind of need to start establishing him as the lead early on. Because one thing I realized in rewatching it not too long ago, this might seem obvious, but a lot of people talk about this movie as like a mystery film as to who the thing is, and this movie is very much not a mystery film. It's a problem-solving film. It's very explicitly a quarantine film, because it's not about the mystery of who the thing is. It's about how do we solve this problem of the thing existing.
Yeah, it's not exactly Contagion, I guess. Contagion's kind of got more the mystery thrill aspect to it. Or something like Side Effects, but that's not even like an infection film or whatever. That's just a medical trauma, basically. But I get that. See, what I was going to bring up was that as great a film as this is, and as great a cast of actors as this is, they're pretty thinly written, and they don't. They don't need much more than what they have. I'm not even like docking points or anything.
Here comes our first throwdown then. Because I went reading, I guess we're talking about this a little earlier. The Thing was famously savaged by critics during its era. I mean, I could not find any contemporary positive reviews of The Thing in looking for it. Now, mind you, a lot of reviews from that era didn't make it online, but you have a lot of people calling it, like Vincent Canby, I think, called it instant trash.
Well, our boy Roger Ebert, if I could bring him up for a second, he opened his review by calling it a great barf bag movie. Yeah. All right, but is it any good? I found it disappointing, and I was like, "Whoa, a barf bag movie? I don't know. Yeah. Like, I think it's something like Evil Dead."
Yeah, but I think it just speaks to how overwhelming the effects of this movie were, which I think shadowed a lot of people's original perception of it. But a repeated thing in a lot of the reviews is like, there's no character here. None of these people are interesting. They're shallow. There's all this. Even I found what's that guy's name? Matt Zoller Sites. Is that his name?
Yeah.
He did I found a thing about him called like 30 Minutes on the Thing, which was a very like positive, more recent appraisal of the thing. And he said like the movie's not without its flaws. The characters are very thin, and I have to disagree. Because it is amazing how well defined every character is in this movie. Like, when you talk about movies where, like, I think Ebert talks about like how everyone in this movie just exists to be killed by the Thing. But movies like that, to me, it's always like you have 3 characters enter a room in every scene, and then 2 make it out, 1 dies. You know, which I don't think happens here at all. And also, like the one person that always dies is someone you met like just in the previous scene.
Yeah, I mean, like look at something like Friday the 13th, which generally as a horror franchise just never really did it for me. There's a couple that stand out, but that's kind of what I think of in terms of that criticism. And I want to reiterate, I'm not saying thin as a criticism. I mean, they have everything they need with the wardrobe, the performances, and the direction. Mm-hmm. I do not mean thin as a negative, and I really want to reiterate that.
Okay, because
they're as well-rounded as they need to be, and there's a lot of history you can or cannot read into them.
Yeah,
like, it's very intentional.
I think it's amazing that this movie gets so little credit for just you get everyone's entire relationship, like just with how they interact with each other. Like there's never a scene like like a bad like I feel like a bad version of this would have a scene where McCready talks about maybe serving in Vietnam or something, like which you can maybe insinuate, but you don't need to know. But just think of like how much you get from Palmer just sitting there smoking weed, and Niles on his roller skates, but even then it's like just watching how they interact with each other, you get the sense that these are guys that have been locked up for a while and are getting to know each other maybe a little more than they'd want to. And I just think it doesn't get the credit it deserves in that regard, because I think that's what makes this movie work. I think a movie where if we learned what McCready's hopes and wants were, like the classic, like when you write a character, you have to have want versus need and all that shit. Like I think this movie is an example of that you don't always need that, and if it was in this movie, it would make the movie worse, in my opinion.
It would start to drag because the movie itself would need to like kind of acclimate to that, it would need to being about that because someone like McCready is the main character. But I think of something like if it's like a one-man show or one-woman show or one-person show, like something like The Shallows or like whatever, right? Like that film is completely about that person, their like perspective of the events around them. So you need that driving like character trait. Generally.
Oh man, hold on, I just love these series of shots. Just the hovering through the base. And get another like little moment. Niles not turning the radio down. You get just like there's so many like just empty shots in this movie.
Well, Carpenter is just so good at atmosphere.
Yeah, this dog entering is so creepy. I mean, it's very simple, and it's the famous "you can't tell who it is." Mm-hmm. Which I think throws the audience off as to like you think that it's supposed to be like, okay, we have to solve the problem of who is the shadow, when it's really like, no, we know that it's too late. Like whatever could have been stopped from happening, it is now too late at that moment. So
well, see, here's a hot take. I think I do know who that is, and there is no factual evidence to back me up. This is just a theory. This is on me, not the film. I have trouble remembering a lot of the people's names. The dude who ends up on the table later, when his chest opens up. I'm pretty sure it's that actor's silhouette.
I could see that. But
again, it also doesn't matter.
Yeah. I don't think there's a definitive timeline you can set up. I have some fan theories, which are always kind of like the least interesting thing. But, we'll talk about that a little later. Mm-hmm. Here's one thing I really like about this movie, just while we're here. Going to the Norwegian base, this whole sequence tells us everything that's going to happen. Because everything that happened at the Norwegian base starts happening at the American base. Which is like a really interesting idea of suspense, because you start subconsciously, because I don't think it registers overtly, but when you see the axe in the wall here, so when Child starts axing down the one door, you start to see that like, oh shit, things are falling apart exactly as it happened at the other base.
I think that kind of taps in like in a really subliminal way, like the Lovecraftian nightmare aspect of this.
Yeah.
Like that it's just a cycle of like insanity that's going on down there, and they just can't escape it.
Well, that's another thing where I think this movie's an interesting meet between like a Howard Hawksian Western and a Lovecraftian horror film. Because this movie's famously, it's a remake of The Thing from Another World, which, we just released our Poltergeist episode of the Happy Amblin retrospective, and that The Thing from Another World suffers from a similar thing where it was not directed by Howard Hawks, but he produced it, and everyone just calls it Howard Hawks' The Thing.
Well, even Carpenter in like the interviews where he's hyping up this version of The Thing or other film projects, because look up any interview with him on camera, he brings up Howard Hawks like at least once, I swear to God. But he refers to it as Howard Hawks' the Thing from Another World, or offhandedly, supposedly, and Edward Nibes.
Yeah.
I can't even remember the dude's name, and I feel bad.
Yeah, exactly. A guy who didn't really do much, but he did it. And it's a weird thing where if you look at that guy's career, the one movie he did with Hawks sure as shit feels like a Howard Hawks movie.
It's kind of like, for a more contemporary explanation, something like Dread. You see that director's resume and you're like, he did that?
Yeah.
And then you're like, who wrote it and produced it? Alex Garland? Oh.
And it's like, yeah. It's like, oh, Alex Garland had a big hand in that.
Yeah.
But you never know.
Yeah.
But the thing, and that's another thing that I think resulted in people, I think, negatively reacting to it, is we don't remember, because now The Thing has totally supplanted The Thing from Another World as the classic. Like, this is the one people point to, but The Thing from Another World was considered a classic of 50s science fiction horror. And I think it's a pretty great movie. I like this version more, but I do think that we've kind of ignored how good the original is. The problem is that, like, The Thing in that version is just, like, James Arness, like a giant, like, Frankenstein type thing.
Yeah, I think Carpenter even refers to him, like, as a vegetable man.
Well, he is. He's a vegetable in it. Like, that's the thing, which I believe comes from Who Goes There, which is the John W. Campbell Jr. Novella that all of this is based on, which is a very strange story if you read it.
Yeah, see, I've never read it, and I've only seen The Thing from Another World twice, and I first saw it because I found out that The Thing was a remake like a couple years after I first saw it in middle school. I did not like it. Because that just wasn't what I was into at the time, and now I'm like, I want everything, and now I really do like it. I prefer Carpenter's, of course, but it is something definitely worth checking out. That Howard Hawks minimalism, I think, goes a long way.
Yeah. It's very good. There are some genuinely frightening moments in it. It's one of those movies where they don't show a ton, but they describe a lot, and it, like, really works.
Yeah.
Although, speaking of the block of ice here, do you remember how the block of ice got unfrozen in The Thing from Another World?
No, actually.
They brought it in and they had it, like, in storage, and a guy had a heated blanket. I think this is what happened. And he didn't like looking at the thing, so he put a blanket over it, and it melted it, and it killed him.
Oh, wow.
So that's it, this is a cool reference to that, because this is like that block of ice. And if you want the best scene in that movie, that's not like a super frightening scene, is when they find the frozen flying saucer, and they go out to all the corners of it so we can find the shape of it, and, like, all the men just, like, stand, and they slowly realize it's a flying saucer.
Mm-hmm.
It's really cool.
Something that is repeated here later on, as we
see.
Yeah,
you can see it on the
striking image.
Yeah, this movie, it's an interesting work. It's like a playful, like, fake sequel to it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like the Norwegian base takes the place of the Howard Hawks story.
And, I'm kind of willing to bet that Carpenter at one point was like, hey, what if we made this a sequel to the original one? Like, once he was brought on board, because, he didn't develop this one from the get-go.
Yeah. I think a big part of it was, from what I understand, he was very reluctant to do this. I want to say, though, just to go back, Doc's line of, "Is that a man in there?" is a really creepy line.
Oh, yeah.
And this movie totally, like, has its cake and eats it, too, because, like, they don't show it, but then the next scene, they immediately show it, and it, like, delivers. Which never happens in these type of movies.
Well, yeah, because the whole thing with the monster movies, even now, is that, you can't show the monster too much, Like, one of the big criticisms of a movie that we both enjoyed, Godzilla King of the Monsters, is that, they show the monsters too much, And it's like, well, that's what that movie's trying. It's not, not being coy.
Godzilla 20, whatever, the big complaint was they don't show the monsters enough.
Yeah, so no one knows what they want. Both movies I enjoyed.
If you read the script again, it doesn't even bother describing the thing. It really is kind of like in the shadows monster movie, Which there's a couple scenes in the script which aren't in the movie where that kind of works, but the decision to just go crazy with it, I think was the right one.
Yeah,
But
and let's talk about this pile of meat.
Yep. Oh, it looks great. The smoke coming off of it, and this is a good scene where every actor gets to give a performance. Again, just talking about, like, I don't know, I totally am baffled by the people being like, these characters are paper thin. Like, everyone reacts in a unique way. You know? Like...
Yeah, and I mean, that comes down to, like, obviously solid writing. At some point, this got solid writing.
Yeah.
But also blocking and directing the actors, that plays a big part of it. And when you have an ensemble cast, for those that don't, like, have never been behind a camera or something, this isn't something that obviously is talked about a lot, but, like, it's really fucking difficult to frame actors and like make it look natural but not imposing. And there's like a dozen people in this film at any given point at certain times. So it's fucking crazy.
Yeah. I think it does a fantastic job.
Oh yeah, no. If you want to learn like blocking, watch Carpenter's ensemble film, The Thing.
Yeah. I mean, I would argue you could watch any one of his movies where there's like a large cast. I mean, he does a very, like, I think Prince of Darkness is very similar in terms of setup. I think Prince of Darkness, I think I talked about, a movie I love, but it turns into like a haunted house movie in the last half. It's kind of like doesn't have the follow through that you want it to have, but it still has incredible setup and great characters to the point where you start getting upset when like people start dying.
Yeah. And I just want to say really quick, I think Prince of Darkness is actually a scarier film than this one. I have never been scared by The Thing, is my thing. It's like man. Alien for me, where it's kind of love at first sight, where I'm just like, wow. To the point where like this doesn't affect me in like a way that keeps me up at night. I'm just like, wow, someone did this. Someone created something this good with human hands, you know?
I don't know. I've been scared by The Thing, but not by The Thing itself. I think it's the classic thing of like the scary thing about this movie is the paranoia that immediately sets in and the dread. And especially if you look at McCready's character, because like one thing they kind of define McCready by is he kind of seems to be like the one that's like putting together the bigger implications of everything before everyone else. So if you watch his character up until the shit hits the fan, he's kind of the one looking around, kind of realizing like this is gonna be bad. And honestly, I think if you look at some of the shit that's been happening in our country in the past couple weeks, there was that couple weeks ago where like everyone was kind of talking about this virus, and there was like, well, if they get a handle on it, it won't be that bad, and like this sinking realization that we're currently surrounded by people who don't have a good handle on the situation. And it was fucked up to watch everything play out where it was like we knew it was going to be bad, and then it ended up being bad. And I think the unbelievable paranoia of this film is what the staying power of it. Like, that frightens me more than anything in any other Carpenter work. Like, which I'm not to put down Prince of Darkness, which is a very scary film. But I think if you've ever been in a room with different personalities under pressure, you know how bad that shit can get and how quickly it can get bad. Now, imagine the stakes are the end of the world.
But when you put it like fucking that, then yeah, this is the scariest film
I'm just
ever
saying.
made.
Yeah, this movie's terrifying.
I'm just flashing back to like these newsrooms I've been in, and I'm like, oh fuck.
Yeah. If you've ever had a job,
working with people that I greatly admire and care about. I'm just saying, I know it can get heated. So
yeah, and the debate, like when you're in like, if you're working in like a fucking kitchen, the problem is like who's gonna take the late shift, who's cleaning up, and you can see how like tense shit like that gets and how it builds up. Now imagine you're stuck with those people and you have to stop the world from ending. Like, that's scary.
The Thing is low-key like the most socially relevant film like of our times. like right now at this point in human history.
Oh yeah. Although I think it's a perfect Reagan era film.
Oh,
20. It's right before the AIDS crisis. This movie's perfect.
oh God.
The Thing finally revealed 28 minutes in about. I do love, one thing I like is that a worse film, as soon as the dog thing walked in, all the other dogs would have immediately reacted. It's scarier that they don't react. And then once it turns into a monster, they react, because it even fooled the dogs.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, that's the whole thing in like all these horror films. The dogs, the animals know immediately, but not here. Not The Thing.
Not here. They were fooled just as anyone else. And man, this is disgusting.
Oh yeah, it's so gross. And I always feel so bad because I'm an animal lover.
Yeah.
So part of me is always like, fuck, that's just really sad. Because like they're just a bunch of good boys. They don't deserve that.
Yeah.
But I was talking about me not being scared of this. I showed this film to younger cousins one time when I was babysitting them, like years and years ago. And I was like, yeah, they could probably handle The Thing. Like, my cousin plays Halo. That's violent. And then the dog scene happens, and they're just screaming, like, ew, yeah, what are you doing? Why'd you show us this? And I was like, maybe this one was a little much. And I felt so bad.
Well, I've talked about being raised by an irresponsible parent in terms of the art I was shown.
Yeah.
So I've seen this movie since I was like 5 years old. I think my dad showed me Aliens, and then like all bets were off, and he just started showing me everything. And but my problem was I turned into the kid who showed this to all his friends, and I made some friends very upset at showing them this movie, because it is very disgusting and frightening and violent, especially if you aren't prepared for it.
Yeah. So like I fucked up 3 of my little cousins for like a weekend like that. I was like, sorry. I got a little talking to.
You can see that if you pause. Sorry to interrupt you. If you pause that hallway scene at the right moment, you can see the doc's dick. I feel like the world needs to know that.
Thank you, I guess.
Yeah. So
okay,
I feel like it's an under-discussed element.
Well, you need to be able to tell in case he's turning into the Thing.
Yes.
Yeah, because the penis is the last one to go.
Oh, yeah. Well, it says it rips through your clothes, so we don't know what might have been happening before that. Oh, this is so good.
Yeah. Stan
Winston did this one.
Now, did he do all of the effects, or just like did he oversee them, or just specific ones?
It was Rob Bottin's show, and I think Rob Bottin worked under Stan Winston at one point, and he was the one who he called Stan for help, and Stan was like, "I'll do it, but I don't want credit." So if you look at the credits, he gets a special thanks. He's not credited as being part of the special effects. But I believe this is the only one he did extensive work on.
All right, so like the way the dogs like go out, we never see it fully get the humans like in the moment, except for see, I'm so bad at the character names.
Bennings.
No, not even Bennings. We don't see him turn into the Thing. We see it almost happened, but we never see the moment when it like gets him. We see the aftermath of it, but we're seeing it with the dogs, right? And they're like crying out in pain. And that was a little unsettling to me. Yeah. Because that means the people are in pain when they're going too, It's not like a calm thing. And at the end, someone gets it in the face. And that's like rough.
Windows gets it in the face, I believe.
Oh, Windows gets in the face. Who gets the hand through the face?
Gary. Gary gets
Thank you.
Blair
Gary gets it in the face like that. And it's like horrifying. But I don't know, that the dog screaming was the really unsettling thing to me, because that means the people are going through that in some capacity.
It's very upsetting to think about, and then you just see a dog get shot. Like, we should mention that this movie, I believe, premiered like the same weekend E.T. came out.
Yep.
Its official release was the same weekend as Blade Runner, but its premiere was the week E.T. was released. So
yeah, go see E.T. Leave the theater feeling like the world's in a better place, and then go watch The Thing and just have it all taken from you.
Yeah, and frankly, I feel like if you look at the culture of that time, I feel like this movie the 80s needed this fucking movie as a wake-up call.
Yeah,
But
and that's why they also rejected it, you know?
yeah, this isn't a movie about America being that great city on the hill or whatever the fuck. This is a movie how, when the pressure comes down to it, everyone's going to turn on each other.
But by the end, the ones that do work together can maybe take some good away from it.
No, everyone dies.
Yeah, but they sacrifice themselves for the greater good, you know?
Well, yeah, but we got to talk about how MacReady makes basically every wrong call in this movie.
Oh, no. Absolutely. But, like,
right.
I'm trying to spin it some positive way, even though it's like a really cynical, nihilistic nightmare of a film.
I read a good point about this movie where they said that Blair, the character, kind of represents the classic Lovecraftian protagonist, where they're overcome with the madness of the situation and ultimately succumb to what's going on. And to the point where they become the monster. I mean, how many Lovecraft stories end with that revelation?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Kurt Russell represents the classic American, like, cowboy man. And
I like that.
Yeah, and the end of the movie, they're both wrong. And it doesn't matter.
Well, see, Blair, I think, would be friends with Herbert West, but he wouldn't be happy about it.
Yeah, I don't know if... Yeah, I feel like that, maybe, but it's more just... it's that classic thing. I mean, talk about all the eco-fucking fascists that have come out where they're like, humanity's the problem. Look at how clean the air is now that no one's driving because of the quarantine. And it's like, they're all a bunch of little Blairs at the end of the day.
Oh, yeah, and for the record, everyone saying that, please shut the fuck up.
Yeah,
that is not the problem. The problem is just that the systems we currently live in do not want us to have that, like, that equal balance with nature. There's a way to make it work. It is not capitalism.
There's an optimistic reading of everything that's happening right now, which, look how easily we could change everything if we wanted. Mm-hmm. The problem is the people in charge don't want to change.
Yeah.
So, but I love how tense this scene gets, how quickly it does. Which is, the dog wasn't put in till last night.
This is like, oh.
And here's some great directing where Blair is just, like, sitting in the background. Again, he's the one who starts to figure out, like, oh, we're all fucked, like, way before anyone else.
Yeah, because look at the blocking of the people around the television, and Blair's just huddled in the corner, basically.
Yeah. And if you read the script, again, which I've talked about being very bad, there's, like, 3 scenes in a row of Blair being like, you don't understand, like, we're all doomed, before he goes officially crazy and starts smashing things. And instead here, it truncates it all into, like, scenes with very little dialogue about it. I mean, we're coming up on the computer scene where Blair, just watches that computer and calculates, and we're basically just told that's this movie's version of exposition, which people complain about that. I think that's a much better version than, like, having people sit around and talk about it, which there are a lot of scenes like that in the script, and there are a couple deleted scenes where they overly explain what's happening.
Well, because, I mean, how big of a problem is that, like, nowadays with, like, every, like, big budget movie? Because this was kind of like I guess we can talk about it now, like, this was almost basically Carpenter's big break. With a big studio budget behind him, a big critical reception coming up. Doesn't mean it was going to be positive, but it was going to be the biggest audience basically he'd ever see, and just have it completely rejected because it doesn't operate like a traditional studio film, I guess. Like, even now, people love The Thing, but movies don't operate like this. So.
Yeah, and all the ripoffs of The Thing have failed. Like, there aren't really great ripoffs of The Thing. There's a lot of great, like fun little homages. There's, like, that X-Files episode everyone talks about, and Like Deep Space Nine had the whole changeling thing, but it never works as well.
Yeah. Well, no, you know what? There's an episode of Gravity Falls with a shape-shifting monster, and it's terrific.
Oh yeah,
but,
that's a lot of fun.
But that's a kid's show, so
it's a children's show. Yeah,
it's not the same.
And, not the same at all. But yeah, it's that thing of just I don't think people like the closest I think we got to like a good homage to this is like The Hateful Eight.
Oh yeah, The Hateful Eight is basically like the same film, but instead of a shape-shifting alien monster, it is like the boiling kettle of like racism and like systemic problems in American society.
Yeah, and that's another movie where everyone ends up being terrible by the end.
Oh yeah, that's a film also specifically with no heroes.
Chess plays a major role in that film too. The chessboard at the center of Minnie's haberdashery. So I think Quentin might have picked up on that too.
Mm-hmm.
I like this guy casually throwing out that the ice must be 100,000 years old or whatever.
Yeah, like, see, I totally buy the line and everything, but it's one of those. That's one of the moments where you take a second to think about it, and you're like, "Wait, what?"
Oh yeah, there's insanity in this movie. I mean, the fact that it's a flying saucer, like, which like this. You're telling me this thing like has a ship that is mechanical, like, you know, in the. When you think about it, that doesn't make any sense, but when you watch it, it's played so straight and taken so seriously. And again, there's just no dialogue here, and it lets your brain do the mental leaps, and that's how it gets into you. Which is again how this paranoia that all these people start suffering with starts just building.
And see, I think that's also like. Because Carpenter, while a great filmmaker, he's very minimalist in his approach. You know, like I've been watching Escape from New York a lot lately. And that's like a film where it's just a dude walking around basically for a lot of the time. And it's perfect for what it is, right?
Well, he's accused of style over substance. And I think what we're starting to learn more is that, no, there's plenty of substance to his movie. Just no one fucking bothered to look for it.
Yeah, like it's just a testament to his direction that he can like stuff all this in with extended sequences of just like characters blocking and the environments like meticulously designed to like represent certain things or whatever.
Yeah, he just knows the power of not saying something.
Yeah, and so like that simplicity, I think, is a perfect counter to the things like ever-changing nature. You know, that's why I think this is the best Carpenter film, because it's where like his like entire toolbox kind of is confronted by something that is like like literally unknowable and undefinable.
Yeah, and every strength of his is just firing on all cylinders in this movie. Like there's no like other than maybe Halloween, there's no one where like all the pieces coalesce as well as this movie.
I don't know. I loved Halloween more each time I watch it, but there are still other ones I think that are significantly better, which is no disrespect to Halloween.
Well, I mean, we're talking about that personal favorite is very different than well made, you know?
Yeah, no, I'm serious. I think Escape from New York comes together much better than Halloween.
Yeah. I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that.
Escape from L.A.
No, listen. No. Anyway, I was going to bring up Prometheus and how Prometheus is a failed version of this. If I'm not going to do that, you're not bringing up Escape from L.A.
Yeah, no, this is not a retrospective. We can't go all over the place like that.
I'm trying to be as polite as possible.
For John. Oh my God, that's a Terminator reference. Anyways, so like the computer scene, that this is actually the first scene I watched from the film. Oh. I was at my dad took me to like he worked for the gas company, so they had like a barbecue, right? And all the kids inside while the adults are getting hammered on the outside. And so someone was just like, let's see what's on TV. And then they put it on the thing like, oh, this one's great. You've all seen it, right? And I was like, what's the thing? And I was like, I was less than like 9 years old. And this scene, I was just like, what's happening? I don't know what this is, but just something about it was so magnetic to my like psyche. I just completely was honed in. I think it was on TNT or something. And I was just like, I could not look away. The music, the rhythm of the scene, it was just like I had never experienced something like it.
This is one of those movies where when you watch it, it's like, you're like, why can't every genre movie work this good? You know?
Yeah.
Like, there's so many movies I love, but, like, they all kind of fall short just because, you know, circumstances, resources, blah, blah. Like, I guess that's what this movie really is that this was the one time, quote-unquote, B genre film was given, like, studio support. Mm-hmm. You know? Like, even something like Alien, it's oddly, like, crisper, and, like, in a way, I think that kind of, like, it gets in the way of what that film is a little bit, and that's, like, that's, like, very minor. I'm not trying to, like, dunk on Alien.
Yeah, of course. I disagree with what you're saying, but I completely see what you're saying.
Like, what I'm saying, all I'm saying is, all I'm saying is that, like, if it's the middle of the night, and it's, like, you give me a one-sentence setup of a horror film, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you go, like, what you imagine what it wants to look like. When you hear the one sentence description of the thing, this movie is exactly what you want it to look like.
Yeah.
Whereas Alien is a more heady film. It's a more, you know, which is like kind of elevated in that way, while also being like a gothic dark house movie in space.
Yeah, or to paraphrase Sir Ridley Scott, it's a B movie with an A movie budget.
Yeah. I wouldn't agree with that, but
I would not either. He's just a crazy.
No offense to Sir Ridley, but yeah, it's just like the thing, like Alien, which a movie I love. You know, I'd put The Thing on any day of the week over Alien, and that's not really a knock at it. It's just in terms of like what I want to see.
Yeah.
In a movie, and again, and a lot of the reviews for this would like bring up Alien as like the superior version, and I just disagree wholeheartedly. Not even in like a one is clearly better. They're just clearly different movies.
Yeah, like whoever's saying that, like no, that's.
I think they wanted more of the like class stuff that's in Alien in this movie. And it's like, there is that element here, but it's like not as overt, you know?
Yeah, I guess it part of that will always come down to what people prefer in the film itself, you know, or like what director style you like, or like what the film's trying to say, like what draws you to a movie at the end of the day. And Carpenter's whole thing, I think, is such a strength because it's such a specific tone he's often working with. But it's also broad enough with the stories he's telling that you can stuff all these different like ideas and personalities into the confines of his like film structure.
Yeah. And I think there's that classic like with a movie like this, at some point you're like, fuck, what would I do in that situation? Which you don't get with some other horror films, even very good ones. You don't necessarily feel that way. Not to bring up Alien again, but like, you know, Alien's a final girl movie, and you kind of just you kind of just end up aligning with her because she's the one that's left. No disrespect to Ripley, but like that's just kind of how the dominoes fall in that movie. Whereas this, you can kind of imagine yourself as one cog in this nightmare machine. Yeah.
It's easier to just kind of supplant yourself in there, I guess.
This might be... No, this scene is terrifying. This upcoming moment with Bennings. When he howls.
Yeah. Well, just the image of this run we're about to see, it was... is a little... Like, if I saw that in the middle of the night, I'd be like, I'm going back inside. Like,
and you had the Dean Cundey blue lighting. It's so good.
Oh, fuck it. Like, Dean Cundey, if you're out there, I know you are. Thank you. Just what a great filmography this guy has.
And this movie, you know what's a movie I don't feel this way until... I never feel this way again about the Arctic as a setting until... Oh, there it is. Like the slow reveal of the hand, and then you can hear like... You can hear a human scream in the middle of like all these alien screams. Like, that's fucked up.
That just sends it to like the next level. And see, that brings up the thing I was bringing up too. Like, like how much of them is suffering in that transition.
Yeah.
You know?
Or how much of them do they fully go away? Like, that's what... And it's like, it's a really, like, twisted version of, like, that unknowableness of death.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, what if the evidence pointed to death being eternally painful? Like,
you know, or like, this is a little different, but it's a line that always stuck with me, that Dawn of the Dead line about, like, when hell is full, the dead will walk the earth. You know, like, my brain did conflate the two of these at one point. Not that they were the same movie, just that same, like, ideology, like, what is happening to that person's, like, body or soul in, like, the transition into the thing.
But I was saying, this movie very much reminds me of the Werner Herzog documentary, Encounters at the End of the World, where he films at the... Very interesting. Emphasis on the end of the world part, of course. But it's kind of like, it's a funny documentary about, like, what type of person would go to the Arctic, and also, like, just like the weird drive of humanity that brings us to these locations. And this is just like the horror film version of that. Which, again, why I don't think you need, like, all these super, like, deep characterizations of everyone, because it's like, the movie trusts the audience enough to be like, hey, anyone that would be in the Arctic is going to have a couple screws loose, and they're going to be a little quirky.
Well, you know, they actually play this film every year, like, at a science station.
Yeah, I read that, yeah.
Yeah, like...
which is fantastic.
Yeah, that's pretty great. But then, you know, what do they think of when they go to sleep at night?
Well, yeah, you just gotta hope you don't run into that shit out there. Because every now and then, you know, they dig in the ice and they uncover something that, like, we've never seen before. Because, like, under the ice, there's, like, all these, like, parts of the ocean that have been, like, separated by miles of ice for, like, ever. And so, like, life evolves in, like, completely different directions out there. You don't even need alien horror. It's terrestrial horror.
Yeah, no, it's here. The fear is here. I think even, like, Wilford Brimley, like, often retweets people's, like, scientific discoveries, and he's like,
is that really
shit.
Him? I don't it's
know,
not verified.
But it's funny to imagine that it is.
Yeah, because Wilford Brimley's like 90 at this point. Like,
yeah, but how fucking awesome would that be if that was him?
It would be great. I feel like part of me wonders if it's like a grandson or something like that. You know, running the account.
Hey,
which,
Grandpa,
you know,
your tweet got 1 million likes. What?
What's a tweet? Although, from what I understand, he was going to, like, conventions until, like, recently.
Oh, God bless him.
So, good for him.
Yeah.
This is a creepy shot. Although, clearly not Wilford Brimley.
Yeah. Although, Wilford Brimley is, like, not that old in this.
No, he's not, but he's like, it just, that didn't... Although, he's a killing machine in this fucking movie. Like, just that scene of him tearing up the place, which we're about to get into.
Yeah.
It's, I saw there's some stupid show I watched one year that was like the 20 scariest horror films of all time. And, it was hosted by Bruce Campbell, I think. And, they did weird lists of, like, what are the most dangerous, like, things to run into in a horror film. And one of them was Wilford Brimley. And it was just the clips of him smashing up the room. Again, there's another version of this which is very dialogue heavy, which doesn't work at all. Also, like, another really bad element of the script is, like, Clark, the dog handler, is kind of like Lenny from Of Mice and Men. Like, he's a little, like, feeble-minded and, like, loves the dogs. Whereas here, he's just a guy who's, like, he's just more connected to the dogs than the people he's around.
I think we all know someone who goes to, like, a party and might spend more time with, like, the host's pet than the other party patrons. Like, I get that.
Yeah.
It's me. It's me. I am that.
This whole scene is amazing. I'm sorry, just come over.
That thing wanted to be us.
Oh, that's a creepy line. But the rest of the scene is somewhat comical.
No, yeah, it's horrifying. Like
I'm crazy.
The Kurt Russell, John Carpenter commentary is terrific.
Oh, yeah.
So listen to that after ours. They're basically just shooting the shit the whole time and like laughing their asses off. But they give a big shout out to like just how hilarious the scene is too.
Yeah, well, Kurt Russell seems to laugh every time Wilford Brimley comes on camera.
Yeah.
I have to wonder if there was maybe some alcohol on the premises while recording those commentaries.
Oh no, like 100%.
You can imagine them just sitting back watching it. But no, I'll kill you is very funny coming up. And this, Blair, you don't want to hurt anybody. Like, what the fuck?
You don't want to hurt anybody.
I'll
He
kill
just pulls
you.
a gun out.
And then he throws the gun, and they just come in and beat the shit out of him. He just punches, like, and also he fucks up throwing this chair, which is very funny. Like,
Yeah.
he just like misses, and then you just hear Kurt Russell just punching Wilford Brimley. Oh,
Wilford Brimley can fucking hang, man.
took 5 dudes to bring down Wilford Brimley.
5 dudes, a table, and a chair.
Great. No, they
You
got
know, like Nick Fury's going to recruit him for the Avengers Initiative.
One thing to talk about, this Clark and the dogs, this partly reminds me of in the Stephen King novella, The Mist, as things start to, which is very, like, Thing adjacent in terms of a story. It might have been published before this movie came out, though. As everyone starts to lose it in the supermarket, the butcher in the novella version starts to lose it because all his meat starts to rot, and it, like, starts driving him mad.
Stephen King is someone whose work I have very mixed opinions on, but I love him. I love his work.
There's a nugget of a great idea in all his stuff. There was a great Patton Oswalt bit about reading the complete works of Edgar Allan Poe, and how like 90% of his work is like dog shit. And he's like, yeah, but if you wrote as much as Edgar Allan Poe, like every now and then you're accidentally gonna drop the Raven, like, which is like Stephen King's entire bibliography.
He just pumps out like novels on weekends.
Yeah, it's insane. He gets like 2,000-page novels like every year.
Not to conflate the two, but John Carpenter's whole thing was that you could have a pretty good career in Hollywood as a screenwriter, and you could just do like punch umps or whatever, and like maybe nothing even gets made, but just putting your name out there and getting work done, right? His whole thing was that he would outline for a couple days after getting hired by the studio to write a project or something, right? And he would drink for the rest of the month before the deadline to turn in the screenplay. And then the last couple days before needing to turn it into the studio, he would punch out like a single draft in order to give the studio what they paid for.
Oh, it's great. I love it. I gotta point out, this is the moment where it's like it hits home, like the real deep question about like what is the thing, like its ultimate unknowableness, and it's like threat to human identity of the self, like, which is the really scary concept of the scene. But I gotta talk about Carpenter's laziness a little bit. I found some video from his like recent concerts that he's been doing, which is just great. Like, I love that he's doing it. And he's clearly a guy enjoying it. But like he had like all this, like he'd have like written material to say in between songs, and it was like, it felt like he wrote it like 5 minutes before going out on stage, and like doesn't even try. And he's like, yeah, how about a car? And then like it like transitions into the Christine theme, and you're like, what the fuck was that, Carpenter?
Yeah, the blood. Okay. So
oh man, this is good.
We're talking about like how we don't need answers about who is what in the thing, but after like for years after I first became obsessed with the thing, I would try to convince myself I knew who was who, and like no. Okay, so the silhouette's like the dude with the sweater, and it just ate away all my free time just trying to figure out like who was who and what was what.
just, oh my god, the tension. Just everyone, like, immediately turns. Like, it's so good. Because, like, Doc has been, like, a very, like, you know, kind of friendly guy up till this moment. And then he's like, as soon as I'm done, I'll return it right away. And, like, just shoots that look
Yeah.
at Gary. And I love that it's like, it could only be these two guys. And then the movie's like, nope, it was neither.
And then we never get that answer.
But there is a hint. There is a hint how it might have happened. When Bennings turns into the thing, Windows has the keys because he was opening the storage room, and you hear him drop the keys as he runs away. So someone might have lifted the key then.
Oh, I never picked up on that.
You never know.
Yeah.
But the way the scene is framed, it feels like whatever happened just happened.
And again, that's just something that, like, I feel people get cold feet about, you know? Like, they think they don't want ambiguity in stories. Like, they think they want to see everything.
Or they need it to be 100% like this tight thing, like where it's just everything, like point A leads to point B. I mean, frankly, reading a lot of the complaints of this movie from its era, it reads a lot like internet dudes trying to solve certain movies.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
and, like, the weirdest thing is that, like, people don't get that still, you know? Like,
well, it's so weird. What the multiple things that are weird about it is, one, like, it's professional critics not getting it in the 80s. Like, it's the worms at least seem to turn where now, like, professional critics, like, have a better handle on that kind of stuff. But now it's also like, but then this movie is constantly brought up by people who are like, you see, critics aren't always right. And they're brought up by the type of people who, if they saw the thing in the era, would, like, hate it. Like, it's just
be willing to embrace things that are different.
Oh my!
And honestly, it's okay if you don't like it at first or at all. Just, like, come to terms with it on your own and see why something does or does not work for you.
Just understand there's no objective, there's no, like, rigid reasoning behind it. I like this moment where he refuses leadership. The Joseph Campbellian monomyth refusal of the call.
He is not going on the hero's
journey. Hey, he comes back fundamentally changed. He turns into a walking head crab. No. But
that's what Star Wars is missing.
Yeah, but what I was going to say is it's interesting because he is the thing at that moment. So it's like there's multiple interpretations of, is he knowingly giving it up because he knows that as leader that most scrutiny will be pointed towards him. The actor gives an interesting take where he says that that's the human part of him resisting the thing.
I really love that. Oh wow, wow.
And there's also the scary implication that, like, you might be the thing and not even know it, which is, like, a somewhat frightening prospect.
Yeah, that was always my read of it. No, he does not realize that. I guess my ultimate read of the thing is that I didn't know how much people held on to their lives. I guess, like, while they were being taken over. But then by the end, you don't even have, like, a memory of it taking you over. And you do not know what you are.
Well, it's weird, because you have to imagine the thing has to have, like, a survival instinct, because it's doing things to protect itself, right? Like, it'll lash out when discovered, and it's, like, destroying evidence and killing people. But it's such a perfect imitation that fundamentally, it could just be the same person. It really is a chilling prospect.
Well, here's a chilling comparison, I guess. This is like a real creature in human life, okay? Like, it doesn't affect human beings, so maybe not human life, but, like, there's, like, some insect larva thing that can infect, like, birds, right? And it has to, like, go through the bird's digestive system to land back in nature. And from there, it, like, weaves its way into, like, a snail's brain, right? And it, like, controls the snail without it knowing to go to a high point so it can be eaten by a bird, and the larva can repeat the cycle. And the snail, as far as I know, is never aware of it. And so that's kind of how the thing operates, I think. Like, the person's not aware, but the thing is.
So it's that weird, like, I think it's like that frightening thing of like where we have to realize the fine line between human and the rest of biological life.
Yeah.
Which is both like
nature's fucking scary.
Well, it's that weird thing of like there's that beautiful side of like the interconnectivity of all things, but then there's that frightening like the primordial soup and just cosmic chaos that creates everything. But again, we're seeing this is the beginnings of MacReady's leadership, and he ties up 3 people who are not infected at all. And ultimately it's a detriment. But I believe this scene isn't even in the original script. This which is like one of the best scenes in the movie. With the tape recorder, which also, if you have the Thing video game for the PS2 in which John Carpenter has a role, you can find MacReady's old tape recorder at the burned out remains of Outpost 31.
And you know what I appreciate about that? They get it right out of the way. Just boom, you found it. You're back in the zone. You know exactly what you're in for. It's kind of a repeat of like the opening of the movie too, instead of the Norwegian outpost. Although you end up going there anyways in the game. It's weird game.
I have not played it in forever. The last thing I remember watching was a video of a guy basically dunking on it, but from the angry reviewer era of YouTube.
It's such a perfect premise for a game too. Like with the technology that we have now, I bet we could make a pretty good game with it. But I do want to call out something that as the film progresses, like in the scene with MacReady and the tape recorder, with that like dead space behind him.
Well,
there's just nothing there. Like it's that classic horror movie filmmaking where it like kind of trains your brain to anticipate something popping up there.
That and like the constant fades to black in this movie also add to it. But also like in this scene, MacReady is kind of like a threat for a moment, which leads into where we're going to see Fuchs run out there and discover the remains of MacReady's shirt. And then his mysterious death, which is never fully explained. Mm-hmm. And like every option, like we could go over it, we could litigate the whole thing, but like every option is frightening. And which is, Fuchs is such a like, he's like the one voice of reason really left, just kind of overwhelmed by everything. And he dies a very unceremonious death off screen. Which again, all right, so to bring it back, the original script has a lot of these same scenes, very different structure. One major change is that the Bennings thing scene doesn't happen in the original script. Instead, after Blair goes crazy, Blair does not kill the dogs, and the dogs escape or are let out by someone, heavily implied to be Clark. In fact, there's a scene where Clark asks to go to the bathroom, and that's when the power cuts and Fuchs disappears, which is a more like obvious red herring. But in the script, they chase after the dogs, and it turns out one or more of the dogs was infected, and one of those kill Bennings. In like a weird chase sequence on like snowmobiles, which was eventually cut at some point. Then they come back, Fuchs disappears, and there was a whole subplot in the script of Childs and Palmer growing weed in the greenhouse. And it's like, it's very not as funny as you'd hope it would be. And they go into the greenhouse and find out that someone has broken into it. There's like this running thing in the original script of like walls being like having holes in it, which is implied to be the thing, which I think is lifted from the Hawks film. And then they close the door, and Bennings has been stabbed through the door with a shovel. So he was like objectively murdered in the original script. The funny thing is, they apparently shot most of that. Because you can find it on the DVD copy I have. I believe it has been cleared up since then, but on the DVD copy I have, there is a like deleted scenes section, and they have some like photographs from deleted scenes. And one of them is what they describe as like Norwegian stabbed through door with shovel. But if you look at it, it's fucking Fuchs. Fuchs has been stabbed through the wall, but they don't identify him for some reason. And this is where I found out. I read an article years ago that Carpenter basically reworked the entire structure of this movie, like in the middle of it. So like this scene of finding Fuchs's corpse was added. There is a production still of Bennings being stabbed in the back with like a pickaxe by a shadowy figure, which was filmed, I guess. And there's a deleted scene of Bennings going into the dog kennel and like seeing someone, which I believe was supposed to lead into his original murder. And whatever, these changes that were made were all the correct ones, is all I want to point out.
I completely agree. Yeah. You mentioned this as a problem-solving film, not a mystery film, and one, I commend you for that, because that's kind of a perfect way to put it. And I think that's also why it's Carpenter's best, because directing at the end of the day is problem-solving. And you could have the best game plan ever going into a film, and just something's going to come up. Stuff happens. It doesn't say anything about the people you're working with, generally, or you as a director. There will always just be problems that need to be solved. And Carpenter's strength in this case, obviously, leads to one of the greatest films ever made. Yeah, I could just not say anything for the rest of this and just be like, yep, that was great.
Well, this is the classic where we're in the last 30 minutes. Like, believe it or not, we haven't even talked about like some of the major scenes in this film, and those are all packed into the last 30 minutes.
Yeah, I never really kept track of myself watching the thing until this commentary.
Well, if you want to talk about a more like extreme version of this, again, The Hateful Eight, which is a movie that's like 3 hours long, the first 2 hours are like entirely set up, and then the last hour, just everything goes insane. So like that's like an extent, because this is like a 90-minute film almost. So that's all, hour 50. That's actually a little longer than you think. It feels like a 90-minute movie.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the best paced movies like ever made. Like everything about this film kind of fits the bill of like a possible best thing ever.
I'm not sure how much this comes across to the viewer, but the thing that happens here where he cuts his line by the shack, where we see all these like weird little like posts that like help guide you, because it is true that it gets whiteout is so bad in the Arctic that you can like barely see a foot in front of your face. So just to navigate this base, you need stuff like that, which is how Knowles was able to lose him. And again, talk about Knowles in the script is very much a white man writing what they think a young black man would talk like.
Oh no!
It's very not good. But like the actor playing him, whose name I cannot remember, I think it's TK something. He brings so much humanity to him as just like he's like, man, I'm the chef. Like I'm not supposed to be in this shit. Like, I took this because for fucking I'm broke at home. I'm a good chef. They're paying me a ridiculous amount. I can do a year in the Arctic, and all this shit happens because he's so upset that he had to cut McCready loose, even though he believes McCready's the thing.
And that's all in the performance, you know, like, and that's what like you're getting that information in like less than 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Because sometimes with a film, you don't need to reiterate everything, you know? Like, sometimes you've just got it. And the thing is, like, a 90-minute sequence of just getting it repeatedly.
And to talk about, again, not knowing if the person knows they're the thing or not, Palmer's an interesting character because he's the thing for a large portion of it. And he's always the one that's, like, constantly, like, stirring tensions. You know, he's the one who's always like saying like, I don't trust Windows, I don't want to go with him, I don't want to do that.
I ain't going.
Yeah. He's also reading Chariots of the Gods, the Ancient Aliens book, which I have on the shelf right next to me as we're recording. Don't ask me why I own that book, but I do. One thing I will say that I think maybe could have been set up a little better is oh god, I can't remember his name. Sweater guy. I normally know all these guys' names.
Sweater guy. That's his name now.
Sweater guy, but his heart attack that he has in the
I
middle of
guess.
all this.
I don't know, but I guess I just kind of figured like he was already the guy that was set up like as the guy that could handle that.
Yeah, I just think there could have been a moment where he's like, I got heart problems or something. Because
maybe he's taking heart pills.
Yeah, because unfortunately it does kind of underline that, like, something's up with that guy. Like, which is a weird thing where it's like, it could be the Thing maybe was slowly taking him over from within, because they talk about that, like, if one cell gets in you, it can take you over. And then, but it also indicates that if the Thing replicates you perfectly, it also replicates your health problems.
Oh.
Which is kind of funny.
Oh my god. Yeah. So that's one way to kill the Thing. It has to infect someone with, like, cancer.
Well, it doesn't kill him, unfortunately. It turns him into a head crab monster.
Oh.
But I find the implication of that very funny. And I think that's why my idea of why Fuchs burned himself is that he realized he was infected because he and Blair were working so closely with the you know, the autopsy stuff, and that's when they got infected. And also, I think he went out there, and the one who's been stashing this stuff is Blair. I think Blair's the one. He's infected, at least somewhat, and is doing things because he's also building the flying saucer, which is also where I think he might have been infected when he was, like, cutting up the place. And surprise! Oh, I love that. That's so good right there.
Yeah.
But I think that when he was breaking everything and chopping up the place, I think he thinks he's helping, but I think that's the infection already working on his brain. Like,
that's a scary ass
well,
read.
I believe in the short story, the Thing is, like, somewhat psychic. Like, that's how it's able to trick people with part of its shape shifting. So, like, people are, like, losing their own minds in that story. So I kind of I took a little bit of that and said maybe there's, like, some brain things going on here.
Oh, okay. So, like, when the neck was separated, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, when it starts, like, spurting spaghetti or whatever shit's coming out of him, that's, like, the coolest shit to me. I don't know why, but just, like, the little additions of, like, the little spurts as the tendons start snapping, it just gives it, like, so much more personality. And not that it even needs it, because, like, this is obviously, like, fucking terrific and across the board and some of the best special effects ever. But that, like, that puts it above and, like, beyond the Call of Duty, you know? Like, just that little...
Yeah, and you get all these negative reviews of this movie that talk about the effects being, like, overwhelming and it being too crazy. And, like, it's insane to me that there was a time where we complained about good special effects in movies. Like, literally, these people are complaining that the effects are too good. And I feel like it's a backlash. This movie is like a weird simultaneous backlash to the pessimism of New Hollywood in the 70s, but also anger at, like, the Spielbergian George Lucas ripoffs that were starting to come. Like, because it's angry at the special effects, but it's also angry at how bleak and violent the film is. Yeah.
Let me also just say that you gotta be fucking kidding is, like, the funniest fucking reaction.
Oh, yeah.
In the history of cinema. Because that's, like, just the audience at that point, you know?
It's great. And talk about a movie with, like, very few jokes. Like, that's, like, a perfect punchline that, like, feels realistic, you know?
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's just being snappy to be snappy.
And now we go into the blood test scene, which might be the greatest scene ever filmed.
Yeah, like, we're being very hyperbolic right now, but it's the Thing, so I think it's okay this time.
Yeah.
And yeah, that is probably true.
Also, we had that one shot earlier where we see Clark palm the scalpel that he's trying to get close to MacReady with to stab him, which is a very, again, mathematical. I think Guillermo del Toro described this movie as like a mathematical montage that makes you feel it makes you feel rhythmically secure and then scares you.
I'd want to hear an entire commentary by Guillermo del Toro about The Thing.
I know, I would too. This is a movie that I'd want to watch with Guillermo del Toro.
Even in like a theater or something, just hearing him talk over a microphone with it.
Found a good tweet of him
Kind of
defending
incredible.
it where he just ends it with like, fuck the critics.
For a while on his Twitter, he was doing like daily film recommendations. You know, like you can still find them. He still does them once in a while, but like before he started working on Shape of Water, he did a lot of recommendations.
Yeah, someone cataloged a bunch of them like on different websites. He was also doing books too, and he recommended a lot of really good books.
Yeah, what a guy.
This also there's the thing with the lighting on the people's eyes if you're the Thing are like slightly different, I believe.
Really?
I can't remember what it is. I'll have to wait and see if I catch it. I just missed it with Palmer, but there was some decision made.
Okay. Oh my God. You know what? I think I could see it because everyone else's eyes. Maybe I'm wrong here, or someone can like comment or something and just let me know. But I think everyone's eyes are like completely lit with like no shadows hanging over their faces. But Palmer's has like a slight like darker shade.
And I think he's the one that like is the only one that like breaks eye contact during it. Which again, it's weird. I think it's really great that like clearly Carpenter didn't think through like this isn't like a Kubrickian like I tortured my actors until they gave the exact performance I wanted. Like he's like he let all the characters play themselves the exact way they wanted, and it makes it like so much better because it's you feel like you're right there with these guys experiencing these moments.
Yeah. Also, just like a reminder that you don't have to torture your actors, like to get something out of them. You know, like you can push people creatively to a point, but don't be like an aggressive asshole. And you're all in that together. You know.
Well, here's the thing: actors are actors. Let them do their job.
Yeah.
Like there's a video. I cannot find it anymore. If someone can find it, send me. It used to be on YouTube. I believe it got taken down because of copyright bots. But someone re-edited the scene where it's MacReady, you know, giving his whole speech about when a man bleeds and then like doing all the tests. But Palmer immediately turns into the Thing. But MacReady just keeps going through the motions. Where he's like, now let's test Doc, and then it'll cut back to Palmer, like, killing Windows. And MacReady doesn't react until he tests Palmer. And it worked. It was, like, brilliant. Whoever did that was a genius. I haven't seen it in years because it got taken down. But if someone finds it, let me know.
The way Windows is framed right there, it does look a little ominous. Like, I never noticed that before. Like, if you introduce this film to someone who did not know The Thing, like I was watching it for the first time, right? I might be able to catch that, but like I bet that would catch people off guard for a second.
Well, I love this tenseness of like they don't even know, like they might be the Thing and not know it, which is scary to think. Oh, this is the famous "clock was human," huh? Oh, that comes up with him at first. He does the doc, but that's one of my favorite. Keith David is so good in this movie.
Keith David's the shit. Like, we haven't even praised the stuff that normally is praised with stuff in The Thing, but like, Keith David is the shit. He's one of the great character actors. Like, he's just a great actor in general, but he doesn't get enough credit.
Yeah.
Well, enough big work, I guess, because he does work a lot, you know. But like a lot of it is like direct-to-video stuff now.
His career, though, is like the dream of like what you want in a Hollywood career. I mean, the setup of this is so brilliant, and they had that shot earlier with the fake hand, so you got used to it. Like that's a brilliant little touch. So then when that happens, it's like, oh shit.
And the cut is so fast. Like. You don't really get the chance to notice anything even like off or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like if you did a frame by frame, you'd probably be able to see that it's like a fake hand or like it doesn't move. Like, oh, and the bleeding eyes always kills me. Look like little tumors popping out.
It's like tumors coming. It's kind of like when the dude explodes at the end of a Videodrome with all the tumors when he gets shot. Another movie, how was Videodrome recognized? I don't even know, because that feels like a movie that everyone would just call, like, pornography. Like, I feel like that one was more respected because it, like, wore its themes on its sleeve a lot more.
Yeah, I guess. Because Carpenter's obviously very... You know what? He's not subtle either. I think you're right. I think people just didn't look for what his movies were about.
Yeah, I think everyone was just caught off guard. But it is a movie where I think this is a movie that it helps to know the plot before you go in, as much as it's a suspense film, because you can't really put together everything that's going on until you know the whole story. And I bet that was probably frustrating for some critics who, like, don't really have time to rewatch a movie and probably don't want to revisit a movie as violent and bleak and disgusting as this.
You know, I'd like to talk to someone who gave this a negative review back in the day and still has not revisited it. That could be kind of fun.
I think they all might be dead.
Oh no.
Unfortunately.
Oh shit, that was like 40 years ago.
This movie's like going to be 40 years old in 2 years. So,
oh, wow. Yeah. Never mind then.
But, like, I think, like, Ebert once wrote something where he, like, kind of begrudgingly said the thing was good, but, like, still, like, couldn't, you know. Ebert famously never backed down from his reviews. Like, I've only seen him do it, like, once or twice. But...
Yeah. Well, he had a similar opinion to Aliens with this, where he's like, yeah, it works, but why?
Yeah, I think this is the beginning of... I think this era is just the beginning of, like, genre kind of ascending. And I think they just weren't really ready for it and didn't really want it. Which I guess is understandable. I don't know. I'm baffled. I tried to, like, just put myself in their shoes, being like, what if I went and saw this? But I loved this movie as a child. Like, I think it's that weird thing where when you become an adult, sometimes you learn things that you then have to unlearn in order to, like, you know, understand true wisdom. Like, but I don't know. I'm completely baffled. Oh, it turns out everyone's favorite guy, Gary, was fine the whole time.
I like Gary. And his eyebrows, they're very pronounced.
Gary had a rough couple days. Him and, like, Bennings. Bennings got, like, shot in the leg, and, like, fucking Knowles wouldn't turn the music down, and then he got turned into the thing. Like, he had a rough run.
Well, Gary, Gary killed a guy, like, in the opening scene.
Yeah.
Like, he shot him in the face. Like they don't address that he, like, killed someone.
He took that pretty well. If you see when McCready shoots Clark, he's actually somewhat upset about it.
Yeah. Even though they didn't get along that well, you know, he's still, like, murder.
It's kind of like the serious version of when Jack Burton finally shoots someone in Big Trouble in Little China.
Oh my god, I don't actually want to see this, but it is a funny idea. Like, put Jack Burton in The Thing.
Yeah, he would
switch the roles.
Well, he's Palmer. Palmer died, turned into the Thing pretty quickly. Fucking Jack Burton would not last long in these situations.
I mean, that's, like, the beauty of Kurt Russell characters. His characters are so often, like, well-defined that, like, even with, like, minimal characteristics, and you can kind of plug them into, like, wherever, and it would be interesting to see, like, how they react to different situations.
And they're often, what I love is that they're often very fallible characters. Like, Jack Burton is, like, the overt version of it, where, like, that's the joke. But a lot of Kurt Russell heroes fuck up constantly. And which is good to see. Like, you feel like that's something that certain actors these days, with their egos, not to point any fingers, where they, like, have to win all the time. Like, that, I do kind of love how B movie the flying saucer is.
Yeah, it keeps it simple, you know? Like, it's literally just a flying saucer. Like, sometimes you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes the wheel's sturdy enough as it is.
I just remember there was a critic back in again reviewing the Thing video game, an angry critic guy, but he made a really funny line where he's like, "Can you imagine Wilford Brimley landing in this thing in a major metropolitan city?" Like it's like made out of fucking like helicopter parts.
No, see, that would be kind of amazing just to, like, watch that. I also don't know how a human being would fit into that flying saucer.
I don't know, but maybe he would shift. He is the Thing.
Okay, yeah,
Again,
yeah.
it just needs one little cell to get there.
Oh, and see,
So
like that's a compelling idea, and I never really thought about this, but, like, for whatever remake, sequels, ideas, spin-offs that they have, I never want to see it, but it is cool to think about just, like, if it just, the thing shapeshifts inside the ship. Like, it's basically Play-Doh, and that's how, like, it controls the spaceship, you know? Like, I don't know if that's more horrifying or fascinating,
yeah.
but it's something that's going to stick with me, this idea of how it pilots that ship now.
It's again, there's a lot of stuff you could do here, which is why I think that prequel is such a failure, because it's basically just the Thing again, and it really just shows you that, like, you take any pieces away or put any new pieces in, you fundamentally break this story. You just can't remake it, is all I'm saying. Like, it's just impossible.
It's also just louder as a film, you know? Like, what is the Thing but more?
Yeah. It's a shame. Not many there aren't any good real rip-offs of this. Although I just saw my favorite movie of the year so far, and I of course have not seen many movies from this year because of the situation. But The Color Out of Space is a very kind of John Carpenter, The Thing vibe, but also like kind of madcap and satirical and just ridiculous. But it plays a lot of the creature stuff in it very straight, while also being its own thing. Because like a lot of people that try to do The Thing end up just being a lesser version of The Thing.
Yeah. Or like, there's always, like, a fucking crab head monster now.
Yeah.
Like, everyone wants the crab head monster now.
The only people who do that right, Valve Software in the Half-Life games.
Yeah. And that one's, like, genuinely, like, upsetting and
Oh,
scary.
yeah. Those things are horrible. Like, the head crabs in those are terrifying. But
See, they did it right. They took what came before and made it their own. You know, don't just do it because something you liked did it too at some point, you know? Like, do your own thing with it.
this is always a fucked up, just the implication of just, you're going to die and all this stuff. This is, again...
Yeah, see, I'm definitely like with John Carpenter's read with this, just really quick. It's dark and cynical and nihilistic, but, like, you know, these men come together and realize that, like, yeah, we're not going to get out of this, but we can stop this from spreading. You know, it's that World War II suicide mission kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. I think it's the ultimate futility of human existence, but hey, that's just me.
Well, because I think they win.
I think the older I get, the bleaker and bleaker this film feels. Like, it just... Because, I mean, at the end of the day, the real thing to go is, like... You gotta remember, the Thing crashed here. What was the Thing doing when he wasn't crashing? That's scary. And if there's more out there... Like, everything in this is fucking meaningless. So,
God.
I hate to be a downer. I believe I read the original script. In it, Windows does not die in that sequence. Instead, the Doc didn't die in the chest scene, in the head crab scene. He lived, and then he dies during the blood test. And Windows lives until this scene, where they decide they're gonna pair up, and then they're gonna blow up the base, and then meeting together in the middle so they can make sure to get the Thing. That's the plan, and then they end up getting attacked by like a giant Blair thing, which you never fully see. Like, I believe, like, it's just, like, kind of like giant hands coming through. Like, one of them grabs Windows and drags him to his death, but you don't fully see it. And, like, Knowles gets cornered, and then, like, it just implies that he's going to be killed. That was, of course, heavily changed. And I will say, love this movie. And I had this moment watching this where I was like, oh shit, maybe The Thing is my favorite movie of all time. Like, over Jaws. Like, I had that moment where I'm like, am I going to dethrone the movie that I've said is my favorite since childhood for The Thing? And I think the thing that undercut it and that makes it second is just that climax leaves a little to be desired. It's not the worst. It's not, like, awful or anything. It's just, you know, you just had two of the greatest scenes of all time. And it's hard to top it. And the film doesn't top it.
No, it doesn't top it, but I just think it's so effective, you know, just like as a sort of like, oh, fuck it, this is all I got.
It's fine. Like, I totally am fine with how it ultimately ends. I'm just saying, in terms of, like, watching it play out, this is, like, the one moment where I'm like, eh. Like, it's kind of like another movie that does that for me a little bit is Aliens, where every time I watch Aliens, which I love, the moment that, what's her name gets captured, the little girl?
Newt.
When Newt gets captured, I always kind of tune out for, like, the next 10 minutes. Like, I find that sequence not super engaging. Doesn't kill the movie, just not, you know, my favorite. It's kind of like goes through the motions a little bit. And this, it's like, I love where it goes, but it just feels like it's going through the motions.
Not to make this an alien conversation in the middle of the Thing commentary, but this might be controversial, but Ripley throwing down with the Queen and the power loader is cool for, like, a second. And then I'm like, I'm fine with this. It's cool, but, like, I don't know,
I like it.
Yeah, I don't dislike it. I just, like...
I'm not gonna...
The way you feel about the ending to The Thing, or the final showdown, I guess, the final showdown.
It's not a hill I'm willing to die on, but I think it's that thing where whenever you read, like, the proposed Aliens 2 that is always talked about, they always somehow work, like, another power loader fight into it.
Everyone just learned the wrong lessons from that. That's why I'm glad Alien 3 exists in its butchered, controversial form. Where it's just like, yeah, this all happened. We gotta live with it. But The Thing sequels or spin-offs or whatever should also follow suit and just... Or remakes or whatever the fuck happens next, because you just know what's going to happen. Don't do the thing we know. Just don't do the callback, you know? Don't just do repeated things that we're familiar with.
Just do what this movie did, which literally just told its own story. Like, just... Well, some asshole's going to be like, I made it more like the novella. And then you watch it, and it's like, nope, you just made John Carpenter's The Thing. Like, whatever.
Like, just do something else. You know? Carpenter did other stuff with it.
There's also famously, I think, there's a longer version of this sequence, of course, where the Blair thing is, like, more of a giant monster. Which you can find. You can find it. It's not great quality. I think I have the deleted scene on my DVD. And it doesn't really add a ton to it. I think the version that we have is fine enough. But yeah, this is I do like this scene of all the floorboards kicking up. That's pretty fucking cool. It drags it out so long, so you, like, every time I watch it, I don't know the moment it's gonna happen. You know?
You were mentioning that there's, like, a scene with, like, a snowmobile chase or whatever, and, like, shit like that is, like, way too big for this story. And a climax like this, I think, is as big as it should get.
Yeah,
ever.
I'm not saying I wanted a bigger...
No, yeah, I'm not even saying, like, you're saying that. I'm just glad it doesn't ever become this huge, like, blockbuster spectacle thing, you know?
Yeah.
Not like a video game like we brought up, you know?
Yeah, it's a helicopter fight.
It's like a dumb video game thing, like, whatever. It works in that capacity enough, but it would, like, destroy this film.
Well, the movie's ending.
Oh, yeah.
We could talk about the ambiguity of the ending, but I think that's been litigated enough.
Yeah. I am optimistic about it. Matt's not. we didn't even talk about like the Frank Darabont produced possible sequel that almost happened on Sci-Fi as a miniseries.
Which I believe was going to be set in like New Mexico, was it? Like,
Yeah,
was it
yeah.
like a New Mexico Army base?
Because when I first started hearing about that online, it was like right after I saw The Thing for the first time. And I was like, whoa. Like what? It's going to be like in a town? What's that going to look like? And then I just stopped hearing about it. I didn't hear about it anymore because it fell through. And it's always kind of crushed me.
It would be interesting to see this as like an outbreak movie, but like it wouldn't follow like conventional story structure if you wanted to do it right. And it would just be fucking so bleak. Like, there's really no way to do it, but it's an interesting take.
Yeah. Honestly, what I would imagine is that it would be kind of like The Blob that Frank Darabont wrote. And in case you didn't know that, Frank Darabont wrote the Blob remake from the 80s. The Blob has like a buoyancy to it. The Thing should not have that buoyancy. At least a sequel to John Carpenter's film. It would have to be bleaker.
Yeah. One thing I would like to talk about before we leave is Dale Kuiper's original version of the Thing creature design, which was unused. I found mixed sources saying that because at one point Tobe Hooper was going to do this, he might have come on board then and then joined Carpenter. He had this original version where the Thing was going to be like this brain parasite that sat on people's heads and like controlled them like puppets and then psychically projected still being fully human. It's a very weird concept. They built a model of it. You can find it online. And there's tons of artwork too. Unfortunately, Dale was assaulted by a drunk biker early in his time on the production and couldn't do any of the special effects work for a little bit. And the studio, instead of going with him, went with Rob Bottin, who had a completely different take on it. You can find information about Dale's portfolio online, and he's incredibly bitter in it. He spends most of the time complaining about John Carpenter's version, and he also accuses Rob Bottin of like snaking the job out from under him. It's an interesting take. I'm very glad it didn't happen. I do feel bad for Dale, though, who did not have a prosperous career afterwards.
Ah, man. That's too bad. That's kind of a bummer. An appropriate downer, I guess, for the ending of this film.
Yeah, it's worth reading about. Yeah, I guess we got to end it on a down note.
Yeah. I don't know. Sometimes things just don't work out.
Exactly, just like this.
No. No, this is fiction. That was real. It's a tragedy. It's not something to make light of.
All I'm saying is there's truth in this art.
That I would agree with. Okay. I guess to kind of bring it around before we head out, all this John Carpenter stuff kind of has like this punk rock attitude to it, like this kind of fuck the system, fuck the man. And then this movie literally ends with the world around them on fire. And maybe that's part of the reason why it was rejected initially, you know? It's a punk rock movie, so it got a punk rock response. And that's not always the most positive thing at the outset.
Yeah.
This was John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yep, that was it. I don't have much more to say. We can end this right here.
Yeah, thanks for suggesting this, Matt. This was a lot of fun.
No problem. I had a great time.
And maybe we'll have to do more of these if this does well.
If we're still under quarantine in a month.
We probably just will be. But until then, Matt, where can the people find you?
I'm at EmperorOTN1 at Twitter.com. And I am now streaming on Twitch.tv at just EmperorOTN every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
And I will put a link to that down below in the YouTube, SoundCloud descriptions, and also listen to us on iTunes and Spotify. And congratulations to patrons who got this way earlier than everyone else. I've been your host, Diego Crespo. Please follow me at the Twitters at the Diego Crespo and also the Waffle Press at all those places I mentioned. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Be safe. Stay hygienic. Stay hydrated. Take care of yourselves out there. Take care of each other. We have been professionally unprofessional.
Aye.